Hi everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of The Space Pirates, the sixth story of the sixth season of classic Doctor Who, starring Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. It's the 49th story overall, it's 6 episodes long, and it's written by Robert Holmes. Of all 6 episodes, only episode 2 survives in the BBC archives, and this is probably the worst affected missing episode in the Patrick Troughton era, as no telesnaps exist, and we don't see any form of pictures apart from promotional pictures and but the audio exists, but I think the audio is in very poor quality. But on the bright side, this is the last Doctor Who missing story, and as from all the war games, as from the war games, all episodes exist in the BBC archives. In addition, this is the last story to be produced by Peter Bryant, and Derek Sherman takes over in the war games and departs in the following story, The Spirit from Space. The Space Pirate is as follows. The TARDIS materializes in Earth's future on a space beacon just before it is attacked by pirates. The travelers find themselves trapped in the sealed section of the beacon. It is blown apart and flown to where pirates will plunder it of its precious mineral argonite. They witness a conflict between the pirates and the Interstellar Space Corps, led by General Hermack and Major Warn. So that's it for the Space Pirates. So the Space Pirate is a well-known bad story of Doctor Who. I know a lot of Whovians hate it, and I can't understand why. I think pretty much almost every Whovian who's actually watched this story hates it, or that I know of anyways. The only one that actually I know who doesn't actually hate it, I think the closest one is another Doctor Who YouTuber, Alan Kayla. I think he does highlight the good points of this story and does highlight some of the weak points of this story, and I kind of agree with what he said about this story. And so, but I actually don't think the Space Pirate is that bad as it's made out to be. But I can see the fault, but it's not all that bad, to be honest. Talk about the behind the scenes aspect of and the making of this Space Pirates. You can't really tell a whole lot for its production. I mean, other than a few aspects. I mean, it's mainly missing. Only episode 2 survives, and that's what we see of the story itself. The plot was interesting, but obviously the execution failed to deliver in my eyes. The script was okay, but I felt there was too much dialogue, and obviously, as I said before, this story is mainly missing. The only things we actually see from this story, aside from the loose cannon recons, is in episode 2, which actually features the beacon that the Doctor Jimmy and Zero trapped on, uh, Milo's ship, the Liz, and the Space Corps ship, which had Warren and Hermack in it. I mean, however, I did like the visual shots that we saw in episode 2 of the different ships and all that, and how they were in space. That was pretty cool, having them fly in orbit and having all the interesting shots, and I think that was very cool to see. And it's a shame we don't see them out at episode 2. The direction by Michael Hart was okay, but compared to other directors, it didn't really live up to, let's say, what's his name again? Michael Ferguson in Seeds of Death and Douglas Camfield in The Invasion, plus other stories as well. I also like the special title card of this story. Not as impressive as the Seeds of Death, but I still like it. I mean, I did like the incidental music. I mean, I do wish the story was actually as good as the music, especially with the whole woman wailing motif they had throughout the whole story itself, and it was very interesting. I mean, I really like Dudley Simpson's compose, yeah, what's the music that he makes throughout the series. I mean, I think the 60s was probably his best, and he does have some good scores in the 70s as well, such as The Seeds of Death and all that. So now on to the acting aspects. It wasn't as bad, but I did feel it was quite boring. I mean, Charlton was alright, but I do feel as if this was his weakest performance, and but you can tell he's trying his best. But obviously, the fact that long have Patrick Charlton, Fraser Hines, and Wendy Pabry, they didn't really have a whole lot to do because they were busy on location filming for the War Games, and so I think they missed most of the studio shots. And I think this was very evident in episodes 1 and 2, and I think they came in to film their part, and I think they do slightly more from episode 3 onwards. But yeah, but I did like the scene in episode 2 where the Doctor was trying to use magnetic force to reconnect the beacon parts to try and get back to the TARDIS, but the Doctor messed up, and then the beacon piece they were on drifted further away from the other pieces, and the Doctor acknowledged that he messed up, and this is probably one of the only times you see the Doctor actually very serious. Jamie and Zoe, they were okay along with the Doctor, but along with the Doctor, they didn't really have much to do. They all three of them were just mainly background characters, while the side characters pretty much just carried the plot. Jamie does get a bit of action scenes in there, but compared to other stories, this is practically nothing. So now on to the side characters. We had Milo Clancy. He was a space pioneer and he was partners with Dom Isigri. He and Dom were the first men to get into deep space and they got rich by mining argonite, but then Dom went missing and the space pirates they kept stealing from Milo, and that's how the Space Corps think that Milo Clancy was responsible for the space pirates attacking the beacon. Milo Clancy is one of the reasons why I actually like the story. I mean, his character's not that bad. He actually stood out for me. I mean, probably because of his dodgy American accent, but he was an interesting character. He did have good motives, and he was a good ally to the Doctor. And I like the fact he was antagonizing them at first, but then he does work with the Doctor to defeat the space pirates later on. Plus, he was a very funny character. Following that, we have Madeline Isigri. She's Dom's daughter, and she's the head of the Isigri mining company when her dad was disappeared. And so she was actually blackmailed by Cavern, and she pretty much allowed him to set base up in Tar, and then after Cavern's death, she pretty much has to go to trial because of what she was because of her allowing the space pirates to set up base in Tar. She was another interesting character. She did stand out a little bit, but she could have been a little bit better. Plus, besides, I don't know what the hell was going on with that headpiece that she was wearing. I really don't understand why they put that there. It just looked very weird. We had Nikolai Hermack and Ian Warren. They were the main guys that we see in Interstellar Space Corps. Warren was actually serving under Hermack, and Hermack is actually the commander. Considering the fact that they were pretty much after the space pirates themselves, and they even accused Clancy of being the leader, they don't actually do a whole lot other than just ordering people around and ordering the space pirates' deaths. They didn't really do a whole lot. They don't even meet the Doctor for some very odd reason. We also had Dom Isigri. He's another space pioneer and the former partner of Clancy. He was disappeared and assumed that he was actually adopted by Cavern, and then which led to Madeline thinking that he was actually dead. He doesn't actually do a whole lot because he actually shows up in episode 5, but he does get reunited with Milo and his daughter Madeline, thanks to the Doctor. And we also have Dervish. He's Cavern's second in command. He's not as violent as cruel as Cavern, but he's practically another fusion from the previous story. He does end up dying alongside Cavern when the Space Corps destroyed their Beta Dot ship, when the Doctor had actually prevented Cavern from blowing up Tar. When we did find out in I think it was episode 5 or 4 or 5 that Dervish isn't as extreme as Cavern, I did find it a bit interesting. I do feel that Robert Holmes actually missed an opportunity of having Dervish betray Cavern and actually help the Doctor and to defeat them. But nevertheless, this is what it is, isn't it? So to summarize, the main side characters, other than Clancy and to an extent Madeline, they were all quite bland, to say the least. I mean, they didn't really catch my eye compared to the other characters that were there. Now let's talk about Maurice Cavern. He is the main villain of the story, and to be honest, I found him to be a very bland villain as well. I mean, he could have been really interesting, but he was just there for the sake of the story having a villain. He does have some dastardly motives, such as trying to destroy Tar when the Doctor actually stopped him and exposed their crimes. But he wasn't really written very well. I mean, even the other space pirates were bland as well. They were just there. I mean, they could have done something to at least caught my eye, but I think they were just there for me. They didn't really do much for me, to be honest. So the main fault of the Space Pirates is the length of the story. Other than the issues with the characters and all that, I just felt it was way too long. I mean, judging by the plot, it really dragged out, and it ended up just being dull at times. And even the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe, they don't actually show up 15 minutes into the first episode, and we only see the side characters for most of that time, and the pirates as well. They don't really do much. It's just too much dialogue. There's really nothing was really much. Nothing was actually happening a whole lot. It was just. I think my mind was pretty much drifting, and then when the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe actually do show up, the story does. The episode does pick up a little bit, and we obviously have the cliffhanger. And then even in episode 2, the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe, they were still on the beacon pieces, but then they don't actually we don't actually see them until 7 minutes into the second episode. So that was just pretty much a sign that this story is not going to be as great as it would have been. And so, but I would say that the Space Pirates does have a plot hidden amongst the major faults. In addition to the main cast not actually doing a whole lot, and then the side characters pretty much dragging themselves to try and force themselves to pick up the plot. But obviously given the story restrictions, they really couldn't. And obviously, this story being missing doesn't actually hope at all. I mean, if the story was found, maybe it would have been a little bit better, but I'll just remain hopeful it does get found one day. So I would give the Space Pirates a 5 out of 10. But don't get me wrong, this story does have a bit of credibility. One of them being the last story to have missing episodes, so don't completely rule it out. So, but I would say you need a lot of patience and, a lot of patience to get through this story because it does drag a whole lot and it does tend to be a bit dull. And the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe, as I mentioned before, they don't actually show up until a good 15 minutes to the first episode, and obviously they don't do a whole lot. So my next review will be the season finale of season 6, and the last story of the second Doctor, Jamie and Zoe, and the final story of the 1960s, and obviously the first appearance of the Time Lords and Gallifrey, and that story is the War Games. Whew. So that's it for the missing episodes of Doctor Who. It's been a long, reconstructed, and sometimes animated journey. Thanks for watching this review. Please let me know what you thought of this story and tell me what your favorite missing episode of Doctor Who is. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Until then, see you next time.